Welcome everyone to another episode of Revolution Recap. We have a new style of show today where we want to debate some of the biggest questions surrounding the New England Revolution. I'm Greg Johnstone. Joining me today is Seth Macomber of the Musket. Seth, how are you doing today?
I'm excellent. The Bent Muffin is actually a restaurant that we're thinking about opening, but currently we write for the Bent Musket.
It sounds like a great brunch spot, where a soccer-themed brunch spot where you can go and kind of have a good pregame meal. This is kind of a new style, Seth. You and I have been talking about this for a little bit, where we kind of, separate from our normal weekend post-game shows, we kind of take a little bit of extra time and we go into the bigger questions. Each of us take a side, not necessarily the side that we believe with, that are our actual opinions, but we kind of take a side, kind of lawyer up, and kind of debate the hell out of it. So this is a little bit topical. The Revolution are signing Giacomo Vrioni. I think I am saying that correct. We are recording this shortly after this news was broken, but we wanted to kind of cover if the Revolution are making the correct call, signing a forward as the next designated player, if that is the right decision, if this is the right guy. Seth, I believe you are taking the side of yes. I am taking the side of no. These are not necessarily our stances, so you might hear me say something different on one of our normal weekly post-game podcasts. But for the sake of debate, Seth will be taking yes, I will be taking no. Before we begin, I wanted to let everyone know this episode is sponsored by Golasso Kits. Be sure to check them out at GolassoKits.com and save 15% off your order by using promo code REVSRECAP. And this show is also brought to you by our friends at The Rebellion. Go check out anyrebellion.org for more information about how you can become involved with supporter culture and how you can possibly become a member. And of course, follow us, Revolution Recap, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can also reach out to us at revolutionrecap@gmail.com. Follow Seth at SethMan31 on Twitter, and follow the Bent Musket at the Bent Musket on Twitter, and www.thebentmusket.com for year-round coverage. Seth, go ahead and give it to me. You think this is a good move. Why?
Vrioni is absolutely the striker that the New England Revolution need. Keep in mind how good Adam Buksa was in this league. The 6'3" striker had 29 league goals, 11 of them scored with his head. So obviously he's all good with his feet, able to move things around, and he is a target striker. Unfortunately for the Revolution, an offer came in that was too good to pass up, and now Buksa is gone. He is in France, and there is a hole that they need to fill at that target striker position. And guess who they brought in? A 6'3" striker from Europe. Sounds a little familiar. Okay, we've seen in recent weeks Gustavo Bo play as the target striker, as a lone striker. Sometimes he pairs with Josie Altidore, and it just doesn't really work that well. I think Gustavo Bo is a very, very good striker. He's good with his movement. He's able to drop into space, but he's not the target man. And as a result, the Revolution's outside backs just aren't being the weapons that they need to be. They're not getting forward. They're not pumping in the crosses that are often finding Adam Buksa. And the game is being played in a little bit different of a way, because Bo is dropping in. He's going out to wide areas. There's not that person in the middle that can hold the ball up, win fouls, and be that target, especially on set pieces. So I gave you that stat before where Adam Buksa had 11 of his 29 league goals in MLS with his head. Well, Gustavo Bo only has one. I mean, that tells you quite a bit about who the Revolution want to be and who the Revolution need. And in my opinion, Vrioni is that perfect target striker, a young striker they can mold a little bit, that's going to put the ball into the back of the net.
See, I don't see this necessarily as is he the right guy? I'm not sold on him being the right guy overall, but I think this designated player spot should have been used in the midfield. Since Adam Buksa has left, we have seen the Revs play with two strikers and then back to their 4-2-3-1, which they've played in previous years, and they look a lot better in the 4-2-3-1 with Gustavo Bo as the lone striker. I think this DP spot would have been better if you had a solid midfielder that you could pair with Matt Polster, or maybe even a winger that you could put on the other side of Barrero. I think there's a lot of questions with this central midfield right now. Matt Polster certainly had a great season last year. I don't know if he's having as strong a season this year, and obviously with his concussion issue, we're not sure when he's going to be coming back. Please also remember this was recorded on July 1st, so if Matt Polster is back, please do not make fun of me. But you have Matt Polster dealing with his concussion. Tommy McNamara is a yellow card merchant. It seems like Wilfred Kaptoum has been playing okay, but he doesn't seem to be the guy. So I think there's a lot of questions in the central midfield, whereas up top you have Gustavo Bo, who's been great ever since they acquired him. And I think going back to a two-striker system and trying to find a Adam Buksa light we don't know how good he's going to be coming into this league, making the adjustment mid-season to America. We saw Adam Buksa didn't have the best debut season for the Revolution. Is Vrioni going to have similar issues as well? So I think there's going to be some questions there as well. And I think if you look at where the Revolution should have used these resources and committing to a designated player spot, I think there would have been a lot more value going out and getting someone to solidify the midfield as opposed to getting another forward where they already have committed a lot of assets to.
Well, I think the beauty of Vrioni is that he's a U23 DP, a young DP, we believe, which opens up the ability to bring in young initiative, U22 initiative players that can solidify other areas. In my opinion, did I say that wrong?
Oh, well, no, I was just going to say Tom Bogert actually just replied on earlier today on Twitter that he is not a young DP. He's actually turning 24 later this season, so he does not qualify as a young designated player, so the Revs aren't going to be able to use 2 more U22 slots.
Regardless, what a great ability to find a young player that they can move on later on. Keep in mind that the Revolution sold Matt Turner on, they sold Tajon Buchanan on, they sold Adam Buksa on. This is another ability to find a talented player that's going to develop in this league. Someone that Juventus picked up in 2020 and kind of saw potential in him. He's ability to find goals in the Austrian league is going to translate to Major League Soccer, and that's going to be something that you're able to sell on later on. So even though he is not a young DP, according to Tom Bogert, I think the idea of bringing him in and seeing talent and seeing investment is going to pay off quite a bit. In my opinion, one of the difficult things that you have is to find a striker with pedigree, and they found their guy here. The other position that you mentioned, a position like the defensive midfield, the defensive, a center back position, perhaps, maybe that's something that you can do more internally within the league. We know that Bruce Arena has contacts. We know that Bruce Arena knows individuals. So maybe he finds those individuals within the league as opposed to going abroad and finding them that way. Because in the past, when he's bringing in those international players, it hasn't worked out quite as well. Wilfred Captoon, obviously starting recently, but a lot of people have been questionable about his ability. Arnar Traustason, the same thing. In the past, we've seen center backs come in and not really adjust to Major League Soccer, thinking about like an Antonio Delamea, for example, or a Michael Mancien. So for the Revolution to have success at that number 9 position, I think it's a good idea to go international and find the right piece to bring in. Develop him more, make him into what they want him to be, and then you're able to sell him on for more money, where you're probably not going to do that at a center back position or a defensive midfield position, because the attacking positions get more attention abroad. And if you're able to develop this player and he's able to give you a few good seasons, then you're able to move that. One other thing I want to recognize before I move on from that is that you talked about transitioning to this league. I think that's why it's a perfect time to bring this individual in, because if he hits this year, then great. All of a sudden, the second half of the season, you have a striker who is putting the ball in the back of the net in good form, and you're heading into the playoffs, and everyone knows that anything can happen in the playoffs. If it doesn't hit during this season, then he's going to feel more comfortable next year. So I think you need to bring in a player right now so that the window of winning a championship is this year, next year, maybe beyond that, but we're probably looking at the next 2 years. You need that adjustment period. So if he doesn't hit this year, he hopefully has a good off season, a good preseason, and he's hitting on all cylinders come next season.
Yeah, and well, the one thing though that you're saying here is that this might be a move for profit. This might be a great move down the road, and that's great. But Carlos Gil and Gustavo Bo, they're no spring chickens. They're in their prime right now. This is the time for the Revolution to strike. You don't want to look forward to a season or two. The window really is open right now. So I think bringing in a guy, if he doesn't adjust right away, if he isn't hitting his stride by the playoffs, that's a very, very big loss. And then you have these other questions behind the front line, in the midfield, in the back line, that you still need to address. So this might be a complete bust. And we look at adjusting to MLS, not just coming over from Europe, but if you look at his record, obviously he had a great season this past year in the Austrian Premier League with WSG Tirol. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but he had 19 goals in 28 games. If you look at before that, his goal scoring record is very, very bare. He went on loan in Serie C in 2017, 2018. He scored 8 goals there, but outside of that, from what I can see here, he's scored 3 goals, it seems like, above Serie C before this past season. So is his success in the Austrian Premier League going to translate to MLS right away? Is this the guy that is going to maximize your chances of winning MLS Cup in 2022? I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure that this is the guy to come in and make an impact on day one. And so certainly I think this is a great investment. I think the transfer fee is very reasonable, very, very low. Certainly they had a big amount of money to go and get a big player. They could have spent $10 million if they wanted. They just sold players for $7 million, $7 million, and $10 million, going out and buying a guy for $3.6 million. Obviously they're looking at this from the financial side of things, but if you're looking on the on-field side of things, I think they could have gone out, splurged a little bit more, get maybe someone who's a little bit more seasoned and is going to be more of a sure bet for 2022. I'm not so concerned about later down the road. I'm sure in 2 or 3 years, this guy's going to pan out. I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad signing long-term or they won't profit, but I think in terms of are the Revs a much better team to win MLS Cup in 2022 with him on the team, I'm not so sure about that.
I think when you look at the positions of center back and defensive midfielder, we've seen that the Revolution have looked better in those areas of late. We know that defensively, the back line struggled with some injuries and was able to get their full personnel out there. But I think the Revolution have figured things out a little bit. Henry Kessler is by the time you listen to this, probably back on the field. We know that Bruce Arena called him the best defender on the Revolution. Even before that, John Bell has proven to be a pretty good option. That his athleticism, his jumping ability has been pretty solid. So I think that clears itself up a little bit. The defensive midfielder position, of course, Matt Polster is a little bit of a question mark, having sustained some head injuries in the past. But obviously, when he's on, he's one of the best defensive midfielders in this league, someone that's pretty underrated. And there's other options there. And like I said, there's ability to go out there and try to add other people within the league, maybe like someone like Latif Blessing, someone who knows the league and understands the MLS lifestyle, as opposed to someone abroad who's going to come in and maybe not quite understand it. I think the biggest thing you need was a striker. I think that you needed someone who's a prototypical number 9, who's able to put the ball in the back of the net, who's going to be a target for Carlos Gil's set piece. If you watch any Revolution game right now, you see Gustavo Bo lurking outside the box when there's a set piece, because that's what he's good at, shooting from long range. So you need someone who's going to actually put the ball into the back of the net. At 6'3", he's going to be able to do that. He's going to be able to head that in, and that's going to make DeJuan Jones and Brandon Bide, especially Carlos Gil, much happier in certain moments. So I think that you needed to find that striker, that typical number 9, to make that Revolution soccer style really try to work and not have to reinvent the wheel completely. Because I think with Gustavo Bo, yeah, you're obviously showing things up defensively because your formation's changing, but you're seeing that the Revolution has to change their attack. They have to focus more on, running off of the striker and filling in different spaces, as opposed to knowing that there's a hold-up striker in the middle of the field that's going to win you fouls, it's going to hold up the ball, relieve pressure, and then, of course, put the ball in the back of the net. When I look at his stats from the Austrian league, you go through and you can see that he's scoring with his left foot, he's scoring with his right foot, he's scoring with his head. He's scoring a lot of goals from inside the box. That's what the Revolution need, and that's going to allow someone like Gustavo Bo to do what he does, lurk around, hit those long-range shots, and hopefully find that same type of chemistry that the Revolution had when Adam Buksa was there.
I just want to add, too, his height seems to be in dispute. I'm not sure what the correct number is here. I think Transfer Market has him as 6'2". Wikipedia has him as 5'11". His Tinder profile has him at 6'4". I'm not sure what the correct height is, but if you watch his highlight reel, Adam Buksa seems to be a bigger, stronger presence who's more dominant in the air. Not to say that Vrioni isn't good in the air, but he doesn't strike me as a complete Adam Buksa replacement. Buksa just seemed like a bigger body that could get up and kind of head him home. So I'm not completely sold on him replacing Buksa and playing exactly in the similar format as Buksa. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as well. And I also want to just kind of address the Max TAM player in the room. Josie Altidore is here. I mean, he obviously has got a bunch of resources tied to him. I know TFC is paying a percentage of his salary, but, he was brought in as basically Buksa insurance. I feel like this move is giving up on Josie Altidore. I think he needed a few more starts, maybe kind of build it up. I understand we kind of are making jokes about his fitness and all that, but if you look at last season with TFC, he scored 4 goals in 767 minutes. That's 4.7 goals per 90 minutes. That's not a bad rate. So I think a lot of people are writing him up as washed up. I understand he's had a slow start here in Foxborough, but he can contribute as a bench player or a spot starter potentially over the next few games. And if he regains his fitness and he gives you, let's say, 6 goals the rest of the season, I could see Jozy Altidore kind of making himself a bit of a factor in this team. And I think by bringing in Vrioni, you're essentially demoting Jozy back to a backup, regressing him into a bench role permanently. And I'm not totally sure that, you want to write off Jozy Altidore this much, especially with committing so many resources to Bo, Jozy, and now Vrioni. You're committing a lot of resources to one position. So I think Jozy Altidore needed a few more weeks before they made a move like this. And I think, as I say, if Altidore comes out before Vrioni is settled in with the team and he starts making an impact, you have too many cooks in the kitchen up there in the forward position.
I mean, I never thought we'd be sitting here complaining about having too many attackers for the New England Revolution. I think that whenever you have an ability to upgrade, you should be upgrading. And I think that with Jozy Altidore, he's still a month away from full fitness, and that goes for whenever you listen to that. That statement still holds true. So obviously his ability to get on the field is a little bit questionable. And if he does get on the field and start doing things, then it gives you one more weapon off of the bench or as a starter. And I think for the New England Revolution, this is a team that when you look at the bench, maybe there aren't as many options as you might want, especially heading into the home stretch or a game changer in the playoffs. So if all of a sudden Jozy Altidore is hitting on all cylinders, you can maybe start him and move somebody else on the bench and bring them on later. Or maybe he's the guy that comes on late and you feel really confident that he's going to put the ball in the back of the net. In terms of formations too, just want to kind of go back to that. If Vrioni comes over here and he ends up being a very good number 9, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to switch to a 4-4-2. We have seen times this year that Gustavo Bo plays an outside midfield position. I don't think that's his best position. I think that he's best as a second striker. But we have some question marks about who lines up where, and if all of a sudden you're moving Sebastian Lletget into the center of the midfield to play alongside Matt Polster, you're putting Barrero on side, Bo on the other side, and Vrioni up top. I mean, there's a lot of attacking elements right there, a lot of good passers on the team. So I think there's things that you can play with and don't necessarily immediately shift to a 4-4-2. I think it's very likely they do shift to a 4-4-2, but I think that it's important to recognize that there are options. And it's good to have as many options as possible as you head towards winning that elusive MLS Cup.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see. And by the way, while we're talking about options, I think we also just need to give a shout out to the all-time leading scorer at Revolution 2, Justin Rennicks. He's still there. What happens with Justin Rennicks with this signing too? I mean, now we're never going to unlock his potential, so I think that's worth noting. But to avoid redundancy, I'm just going to go back to making the leap from the Austrian Premier League to MLS. I'm not sold that this is going to be pay dividends in 2022. I see this more as a long-term move. And I would have rather have made a near-term move. I understand they're probably not going to lure Gareth Bale on a TAM contract to Foxborough, but I certainly think the Revs could have done better with this signing. So, Seth, any final thoughts before I conclude here today?
No, I think that everything's pretty well covered there. I think that the Revolution have decided that they're going to be a team that buys players with potential and turns them into players that they can sell on. And in the interim between those two things, you have a player who's going to contribute to the New England Revolution. And I think Vrioni is the perfect individual to contribute to the New England Revolution.
Well, that wraps us our debate. Who won? Let us know on our Revolution Recap Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter pages at Revolution Recap. You can leave a comment or send us a private message. You can also email us at revolutionrecap@gmail.com and let us know who you think won today. Also, we would love to hear topics you'd like to hear discussed in the future, and if you liked this format and want to hear more of it, please be sure to support our podcast by subscribing and reviewing wherever you listen to podcasts. Every review helps, so please help us out a little bit by leaving us a review. And if you would like to support us further, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/revolutionrecap. Also, be sure to support our friends at Galasso Kits at galassokits.com. Please be sure to use promo code RevsRecap for 15% off your order there. And be sure to check out The Rebellion, anyrebellion.org, to learn more about supporter culture and how you could become a member. And also, thank you to Seth for joining us today. You can follow him at SethMan31 on Twitter or follow his work at www.thebentmusket.com. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And until next time, go Revs.